In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the use of the required field validator in ASP.NET. Now, if you recall from your classic ASP experience, you may have had scenarios where you had to require a user to fill in a certain field before they could submit a form back to the server. And you probably did this with JavaScript, and you did a check to make sure that the value was filled in, and if it was, then go ahead and allow the submit to happen. So there were probably 5, 6, 7 lines of JavaScript code that you needed to do that in every place on every form that you've ever created. I used to keep a little cheat sheet around that. I just copied and pasted in, changed a few values around. It was kind of kludgy, but it worked for the most part. But in ASP.NET, this is actually built in as a user control to make this process a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is on my web form here, I'm going to require that somebody fill in the username before the form can actually be posted. And to do that, I'm going to use the required field validator control. I'm going to scroll down and select the required field validator control from the toolbox. I'm going to drag and drop it into place on the web form. Now you can barely see it off here to the right-hand side, but basically we need to select a few properties for it before we can continue. I'm going to move my my property window over and make a few key selections. For example, the first selection I want to make is the control to validate behavior. I'm going to select the drop-down list, and it lists all of the controls that can be validated on my current web form. So I'm going to select username here at the bottom. Then the other thing that I need to do is actually fill in the text as well. In this case, I'm going to type in, please enter a username. Now you can barely see this. We'll go ahead and stretch this out and make sure that it's long enough. And so now if somebody forgets to type in the username but hits the OK button, before the form is posted, we should see this message, please enter a username. Also, it will prevent it from actually occurring, the actual form post. So I'm going to compile and run, and after just a few moments, my application will come up so I can test it. And so here my form is, and the first time I'm not going to enter any information. I'm just going to click the OK button. And when I do, notice that please enter a username appears. So I can try clicking this again, but it won't actually submit the form until I actually fill in a username. At that point, then it does a post back to itself. You'll notice that the message doesn't appear. And if we chose to handle something in the actual form post, it would possibly change the look and feel of the page, which we didn't for this example. Now, one of the most interesting and important things about using these validator controls, as is the case with most of the ASP.NET web form controls, is that they are sensitive to the version of browser that you have or that your user has to view your page. So in other words, if you have Internet Explorer 5.0 or higher, it's going to use JavaScript on the client in order to do this validation. It might also do some checking on the server as well, but it's going to do some first-level checking on the client. If you have a previous version of Netscape or of Internet Explorer, then it's going to, excuse the term, dumb down the actual HTML that's rendered and passed to the page so that it won't do the checking on the client side. Let me just show you what it kind of looks like if you were to start our application and then view the source that's created as a result of this application. I'm going to right-click anywhere in the page and select View Source, and Notepad pops up. And let's take a look and scroll down the page till we get to the span tag with an ID of required field validator 1, which is the one that we've added to the page. You can see that it adds some information that we set from the property box, like the control to validate equals txt username. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the right-hand side, so this might look a little blurry on your screen. But notice within the span tags, there's the actual text that we typed in. Please enter a username. Now, also, if you scroll down within our output, that now you see that there are some JavaScript areas. These JavaScript calls make reference to a script that must be on the server called webuivalidation.js that contains a lot of different functions that are downloaded to the client's computer, again, if they have a sophisticated enough browser to handle it. And therefore, all these validations can take place. And so there's some more JavaScript. It calls this validator comment on submit whenever the on submit validator is called. And I've never really taken the time to go through and understand this because it just works. That's probably shame on me. I probably need to have a better understanding of it, as do you, but ultimately Microsoft takes care of most of this stuff for us. So this is a pretty important feature because you can use this type of savings in development time to implement something like this without really incurring any penalty whenever you have a lower version of a browser. There's one additional property that I didn't talk about here, and that we'll actually talk about at more length in just a moment in a future video when we talk about the validation summary control. But if you look here, there is an error message, and this error message will actually be used if the text is not available. What you can also do is change this value, and whenever you use the validation summary control in order to sum up all of the different messages from the different controls, this is the actual field that will be displayed in that control. And again, don't worry about that for the time being. I just wanted to call your attention to the fact that this error message property existed and that it is important. So this pretty much concludes our discussion of the required field validator. We're going to continue on with this example throughout the continuance of this series of videos. Thank you.